Daniel Coons.
All right, sir, come on up. You're going to stand right here and be sworn in.
I do solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
All right, so sir, go ahead and come around here, have a seat to my left.
Sir, would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Daniel Coons.
And where do you work now?
Well, I am part-time temporary employed with the City of Chandler Police Department as a civilian criminal investigator for cold cases.
Where did you work before that?
Before that, I finished working as a detective with the Chandler Police Department. Specifically, the last assignment was the robbery homicide unit.
How long did you work for the Chandler Police Department?
Just over 30 years.
Can you walk us through your different assignments at Chandler Police Department?
Sure. After my basic training at the academy, I was assigned to patrol. I did that for a little bit. And while I was in patrol, I was assigned as a crime scene officer. Now, that's still a patrol officer, but it's additional duties such as collecting evidence, processing crime scenes, taking photographs, things along those lines. After I did that, I went to crime prevention for a couple years. I did that and came back to patrol, found a calling to go into detectives. I became a family crimes detective for 5 years, and from there I became a homicide detective. During that time, I was also assigned part-time. We don't have a full-time SWAT team, so I was on that for just about 20 years.
Can you talk to us a little bit about your training to become a SWAT officer and what a SWAT officer does?
So there are many jobs within SWAT. There's regular officers that typically will do entry. There's some that specialize in breaching, some specialize in grenadiers, and then we also have the snipers. So I was cross-trained to do the regular basic entry officer stuff, as well as I became a sniper, and eventually I became a sniper instructor.
Okay, so what kind of training did you have to go through to become a sniper and sniper instructor?
So the sniper training was a basic 40-hour course. I attended that with the FBI. And as time progressed, I would attend advanced sniper trainings so that I could enhance my skill set. And eventually, after having been on as a sniper for a while, I attended a 40-hour sniper instructor course.
Who is that with?
That was with the American Sniper Association.
As a trainer for snipers, what did that entail?
It entailed having to have a good working knowledge of the actual job, the ballistics that the rifles need to perform, knowing how to train new snipers, knowing how to keep snipers that have achieved certification to keep their skill sets up, and to keep meeting the mandates of what would be expected of a police sniper.
Did you ever become a shooting reconstruction expert?
I did.
Can you tell us what does that mean?
It means that I attended a course. It was a 40-hour course where it was completely hands-on. There was classroom, a lot of hands-on with you not only see the results of different impacts and things like that, but you watch it happen, and then in some cases you actually get to make it happen. And then after that, you, as a class, you work together, putting things back together. And at the end of the 40 weeks, there is a test that you have to pass to get certification.
You said 40 weeks?
Or, sorry, 40 hours, sorry.
So what does, I guess, shooting reconstruction mean, if you had to explain that to us.
It means being able to take information from a scene and being able to put it together to reconstruct as best as possible or humanly possible what happened. For instance, you have bullet strikes. In some cases, you can actually get a good angle or ballistics information so that you can backtrack it and get an approximate area where the shooter had to have been. In many cases, you can help articulate whether information given to you was factual or if the information given to you was not. And this is very handy when there are no witnesses and you only have basically the person saying what happened.
Is there any type of certification process to be a shooting reconstruction expert?
Yes, at the end of that course, I had to successfully complete a test in order to get certification.
And when did that occur?
That was in, I believe, early 2017.
Who is that through? Who puts that on?
It was with Michael Haig, his
who is-
company.
Who is Michael Haig?
He is part of a duo, father-son duo, that have become quite renowned for their ability to do ballistics and then teach it and train other people with it.
Okay. And have you utilized those skills that you learned in that shooting reconstruction course as a detective since then?
Yes, many times.
I assume you passed the certification test?
I did.
Okay. So on July 11th of 2019, were you working as a detective at that time for the homicide unit at the Chandler Police Department?
Yes, I was.
During the weekdays, what were your, I guess, work hours normally?
My normal work hours were Monday through Thursday, about 7 to 5.
When you are working as a detective, we've heard a patrol is out driving around. What are you guys doing?
Well, we carry a caseload. So many times we are working on the cases that we've taken previous days or weeks ahead of time. We're trying to come to a conclusion for those particular cases. But many times we also will have our radios on, just kind of listening to what's going on.
So are you at your office is at the main police station?
Correct.
Okay. On July 11th of 2019, did you hear some police radio traffic of a shooting at 5531 South Four Peaks Place?
Yes, I did.
Did you respond to the scene?
After collecting some equipment and putting it in my vehicle, yes.
Is that normal then for detectives with homicide to go out to the scenes?
For the unit at the time, yes, it was.
Can you describe for us what the scene looked like when you arrived?
There were police vehicles around. There were officers that had established a perimeter. Some crime scene tape was already put in place. And they basically had frozen the scene.
Do you recall about how far away this scene was from the station where you were located?
15, 20-minute drive.
When you arrived there, were other detectives arriving? How does that work?
There were several of us that had self-deployed, and we were in various stages of being on our way there. So other detectives did arrive.
How do you decide which detective is going to do what at a scene when you all just show up there?
Well, a lot of times it's just a matter of who speaks up first saying, I'm going to take case. If it's after hours, then the person that's on call will usually be the person to do it. But if it's during regular business hours, it's kind of like a little wrestling match to figure out who's going to end up taking it.
What role did you get?
I got assigned the scene.
Okay. What does that mean to be assigned scene?
So the scene work, assigned scene, means that you're responsible for making sure that the scene is processed properly, accumulate whatever evidence is necessary, report back to the actual case agent your findings so that they can stay aware of how things are transitioning and being learned, and then they can start making informed decisions on what the next step is going to be.
Do you do that alone or do you have help?
It depends on the scene. In this particular case, I had Detective Duncan along with me.
And do you have any, does Chandler Police Department have any like crime scene specialists or people that come up to help as well?
Yes, when I left the crime scene officer program, they had actually started a civilian program so that they could free up the officer's responsibility. So Chandler has several crime scene techs that will respond out when called.
And was someone called out to that scene?
Yes.
Do you sort of, as the scene agent, help, I guess, tell them what to do? Are you the person who's overseeing the whole scene?
It's more of a collaborative effort. We do provide direction on things that we're specifically interested in, but I've worked with them for many years, so it's pretty easy for us to just understand some of the basics that have to be done, such as overall photographs. Before we even think about manipulating anything or marking anything, we want to try to capture the scene as it was that we walked into it.
As the scene agent, did you create a diagram to just reflect what the scene looked like?
Yes.
And is that to scale?
It's not to scale. It's close, but it's not to scale.
Your Honor, if I can have my paralegal approach with Exhibit 5. And I think there's a second page in there.
It is behind, but it's not exposed to the back. Yes.
And is that the sketch and then the second page measurements of that diagram that you made?
Yes.
Your Honor, the state will move to admit Exhibit 5.
Any objection?
If it's not to scale, I don't know how it will be helpful, but no objection.
All right, Exhibit 5 is admitted.
And if I may publish.
Go ahead.
That's not lit up. Well, we might use the one behind you.
Right.
All right, can I have the detective, oh, never mind. There you go. Okay, so this is Exhibit 5, the first page. Is this sort of an overview of the entire residence as well as the items of evidence that you collected?
That is correct.
So we understand where we see these little yellow placards. What do those indicate on your diagram?
On this diagram, they indicate the items of evidence for that particular room.
Okay. And do they each have a number associated with them?
Yes.
And is the second page of your diagram a reflection of what each of those numbers refers to?
Yes, it is.
We see in this A, B, and distances. What is that?
So the reference points, for this particular purpose, we did a triangulation method. So we take measurements from 2 known points in that room, and then we measure out to the item of interest. And then that was how we get a point A and a point B measurement.
All right, so at the first page here, that's the actual diagram. What is the reference points that you are using to make these distance measurements?
So the reference points are not depicted on this diagram, but in this particular room, if you look at the wall where items number 2 and 12 are, the upper or the left upper corner is B, and if you go straight down towards the kitchen area, that along that wall, that corner is A.
Okay, so when we see a reference measurement from A of 21 feet to the bat, we're talking 21 feet this way would be where the bat was?
No, you're talking 21 feet from that corner, straight line to the bat.
Okay. So whatever the closest measurement or closest way to get there would be?
Correct.
So for the bat, it would be something like that?
Correct.
Okay. And then when we see reference point B for the bat, then you're talking from this point to the bat?
Correct.
Okay, just so we understand that. When Chandler Police Department goes to a scene like this, do they utilize any type of photography system to help better document a scene so that you can see things more clearly sometimes than with photographs alone?
Yes, depending on the scene, we would use a system called the Lizard Q.
What is Lizard Q?
It's, in essence, a 360-degree photographic system that you set up on a tripod inside or wherever your location is, inside, outside. And you start the process, and the internal computer for this system specifically takes a set number of pictures where it's overexposed all the way to underexposed, and the images in between. And it does this at various locations along the path to create enough overlapping images, and then those images are stitched together and actually create a 360-degree sphere of the scene.
Did you have to get trained on how to use Lizard Q?
There was some training involved, yes.
If, again, my paralegal can approach with Exhibit 139, you can take a look at that. Do you
Okay.
recognize a thumb drive that is in Exhibit 139?
Yes.
What is on that thumb drive?
On this thumb drive will be the Lizard Q spheres.
Okay. And is there a reader on there so that you can actually view it?
Correct.
There's a piece of paper in there as well. What is that?
The piece of paper is a set of instructions on how to use the Lizard Q viewer so that you can view the spheres.
Okay. And did you initial the thumb drive to indicate that you had viewed it and you recognize that as the Lizard Q that you created on July 11th of 2019?
I have,
Or did you actually create that?
I created the thumb drive.
And that's your thumb drive that you put it onto? All
Yes.
right. State will move to admit Exhibit 139.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
139 submitted.
Judge, at this point, might I ask the witness to come down here to utilize the Lizard Q? I can sit at the table, but it needs to be put into a computer to do that, and I don't think we can hook it up there. All right, so if you can insert that on that laptop. In there. Yeah, thank you. I'm sure I might have to log in. I just might have to log into my computer, sorry. Oh, no, still like. view from there. All right. Can you talk us through, so you've opened the thumb drive to where that's at. How do you get to viewing this program?
So first, you'll have to double click on
Hold on, one sec, I'm sorry, we're waiting for it to. Yes, the USB is in that laptop up there on the podium. There. Yeah.
So first you need to double click on the lizardqviewer.exe so it can open it up. And then it's going to ask you where to look for the spheres. That's going to be D. And then you just double click on the sphere you choose to open up, and it will open it up for you.
Can you make that larger so we can?
Waiting for it to respond.
Got it. Okay.
So once you have the sphere open, you want me to just?
Yeah, if you can just tell us how to work that first, and then we'll ask a few questions.
So once you have the sphere open, if you depress the left mouse button, you can actually move the images around. Without depressing the mouse button, you can zoom in and you can zoom out with the scrolling wheel. If you depress the right mouse button and use the scrolling wheel, this will darken or lighten your sphere. It will give you the ability to look outside as opposed to just the photographs washing it out normally so you can see inside. With this particular program, you can open up multiple windows, but you'll really only be able to view one at a time, but you can go back and forth between them.
So for this sphere that we're looking at, we see Charles Vallow there, correct?
Yes.
And then there's some white cards that we see around the room. What are those?
Those are 3x5 cards that officers have dropped in the scene. A lot of times they'll do that to help identify to detectives items that they observed and to be a warning to other officers to watch out for these items as you're either moving through or exiting the scene.
Is the Lizard Q program then used prior to the scene being documented and, well, let me say this. We saw in your diagram, Exhibit 5, that there were little yellow placards or numbered items. Is that something that's actually done in the scene? So we were looking at the bat, for instance.
Correct. So in this particular moment in time, we just merely left it with the placards there. Again, it was attempting to capture the scene as we as an investigative unit found it. There can be times that we'll do this first and eventually go through putting evidence placards down and then maybe do another sphere showing all the evidence placards.
So would it be fair to say that this is done to document the scene prior to police going through and having, maybe digging through areas to find potential evidence?
Right. It's much like when we do overall photographs with the 35 millimeter camera. This is just another enhancement of that.
For this room where we see Mr. Vallow, do we have two different spheres?
Yes, in this particular room, I did a lower sphere and then I raised it on the tripod that you can see in it to another height, and then I did a sphere there. So we have a program that we can combine those and make it a measurement sphere. So we could do measurements linear, but not to and from the camera because of its limitations.
So what is provided here is without measurements,
That is correct.
okay? And without anything being marked yet.
Aside from the 3x5 parts.
Can you show us the lower level sphere as well?
This is the lower level.
Okay, then the upper level one, sorry.
As you can see, your point of view has changed a little bit, but the room has remained the same.
Okay. And that's all using the same initial placement of that tripod, but just moving the camera height up higher or lower?
Correct. The tripod has the ability to elevate to the platform that the camera is actually on.
All right, thank you. Your Honor, could I have the witness go back to the,
Yes.
thank you. I'm going to turn this for now. So, although that documents what the scene looked like that we saw prior to the marking of evidence, as a scene agent, do you still utilize photographs?
100%, yes.
Why?
It's just an added fail-safe. The lizard queue can, if you do the lizard queue, then you're restricted to just the view from where that camera is at. When we do overall photography, we actually move around and get it from different perspectives. This is just another tool in the ability to show what the scene looked like.
Oh my gosh. Did you also photograph rooms where the lizard queue was not used?
Yes.
When you photograph a scene, what is the process for that?
I'm not sure I understand.
Sure. When you enter a scene as a scene agent and you are looking at one like this, do you just go into the room where this person is and just photograph that area and that's it?
No, we would photograph the entire place to document it. The lizard queue, because of the volume that it takes and not necessarily information that would require the setup of a sphere, then we will just stick with the crime scene photos for those particular rooms.
Okay. So I can have my paralegal approach with exhibits 6 through 138. You can look at those and let me know if you recognize what those or photographs are.
Okay.
Do you recognize all those photos?
Yes, I do.
Do they accurately depict 5531 South Four Peaks Place, both before and during and after processing it?
Yes, through various stages of the investigation.
Your Honor, if I can have those shown to the defendant.
Yeah.
Now, Detective, when you guys are processing a scene, in addition to photographing it, are you also looking for items that you may want to collect and actually bring back with you?
That's correct.
Can you talk to us about what procedures you use to collect and impound physical items of evidence that you're going to take with you?
Sure. It depends on the type of physical evidence, what the circumstances of the offense are. So the type of collection method can vary, but inevitably we'll identify it first, then we'll document it with photographs, and then we will come up with a plan that we're going to recover the evidence. And typically on scenes, I like to work in a particular direction collecting evidence. Others have their own method, but that's the method I typically use. And then I work along with the crime scene tech, and we'll go through exactly what we talked about. We'll have the overall pictures taken. We identify things that we believe are going to be relevant, and then we'll, for identification purposes, we'll usually affix some form of evidence tag, a marker, things along those lines. Not all items are actually taken. Some are actually just documented because it's impractical to remove certain things, such as a slab of concrete or something like that. So depending on the situation. So after it's documented, first with photograph, placard, photographed again, and then we will collect it. If DNA is an issue, the crime scene tech will be the one that'll take care of the method for doing it, and they will take the protective measures, whether they do gloves, swapping gloves out, or they do face masks, depending upon the nature of the evidence. If it's super DNA critical, then we will pull all the precautions out. In this particular case, it was not DNA critical.
Do you still wear like gloves or anything like that when you are collecting these items of evidence?
Absolutely.
And are you using them and changing them to ensure, for instance, you don't transfer blood from one item onto another?
Right, and typically that's what our crime scene techs will do. We will direct the method or the order we're going to collect, and then we'll go through that. And they'll be the ones that'll photograph. They'll change the gloves, place it in the envelope. Typically it's a paper envelope. And then we'll move on to the next item and repeat the method.
So in this case, I'll put 5 back up if I can have the Elmo. Thank you. What was your process for how you wanted to go through this home in reviewing, collecting the evidence?
So for this particular method, I chose to work from the north towards the south, collecting as we went. Item 1 being the hat, which is at the north end of the room. And then it was kind of a toss-up between 2 and 3, so I just decided to go ahead and go for 2, and then we would work our way down from there.
Okay. And so we see in this diagram, north is up this direction.
It's to the left of the image, yes.
Okay. And so in the photographs that you're taking of these individual items, do you see those placards or something that shows a 1?
Yes.
Now you talk about in this that there are scenes where you may have difficulty collecting an item. In this scene, did you actually cut out some pieces of evidence to bring back with you.
Yes, and that's why you'll see numbers higher than what was originally in the room associated to those items.
When you are processing a scene, do you always know what may be relevant or not relevant?
Not always immediately.
Is that one of the reasons why the entire residence is photographed instead of just what appears to be relevant here in that one room?
Correct.
So that later, if anyone wants to look at another room, that's been documented adequately.
Right.
When you're going through a house, even though you walk in and you see Charles Vallow on the ground there, are you still checking all of the rooms to see if there could potentially be something of evidence there?
Well, certainly. I'm no stranger to not having all of the information initially when I show up. So I will go through and I'll look at the residence to see if there's anything that actually stands out immediately. And maybe I'll be able to ask a few questions of whoever's doing the interviews to see if there's any relevance to it.
So are you looking for instance, any bloody items?
That would be important.
Are you looking for any projectiles or anything else that might be not in this room?
Certainly. Bullets pass through walls.
Are you looking for any evidence that might be related to this individual, Charles Vallow, like wallets or things like that that might have been left somewhere in the house?
Yeah, anything that could properly identify who was or may have been present at the time.
Okay. And that's sort of all those photographs as well.
Correct.
When you photograph a scene, do you start at the outside of the home?
Yes, we will typically start at the outside and work our way in and carefully avoid the items of evidence that have been readily made identifiable.
So Exhibit 6 here, what are we seeing here?
So this would be the front of the residence. It faces west. And we're looking at the main entrance that's just off to the right of the closed single garage door, and that door is open.
Your Honor, we're going to have to object. We haven't agreed to admit any of these pictures that are being posted.
I'm sorry, I did show them. The state will move to admit exhibits, 6 through 38, or 138.
Any objection?
To some of them, I mean, they're very similar, and I don't think that they all need to be put on there.
So your objection is that some of them are cumulative?
Yes. Yes, Your
Right.
Honor.
Let me see them. What numbers?
Yeah, which number, sorry?
6 through what?
138.
Do you have specific ones that you believe are cumulative?
Yeah, I'd have to go back through to get them specifically. I have some.
Well, let me browse them. While I've reviewed exhibits 6 through 138, while many of the exhibits show multiple pictures of the same items, there's no two pictures that are the same. They show different angles, different distances, different perspectives, and in some cases, the item as it was found as opposed to someone picking it up and showing it from a different angle. So they're somewhat cumulative, but the court will admit those exhibits. They may help assist the jury in visualizing the scene and determining where things were at the scene.
So we had talked about Exhibit 6 being the front of the house. The door that you were talking about there, is that the door we saw in the lizard queue that was in that front room?
Yes, that's the double front main door.
Exhibit 7 and 8, was that to document a vehicle that was there?
Yes, again, to try to do overalls of the scene to show how it was when we got there.
At that time, did you know whose vehicle that was?
I did not have the opportunity, nor did I run the license plate of it, but it was documented, and I believe later on it was learned.
Okay, thank you. But not something you were responsible for?
Correct.
When we get to Exhibit 9 and then 10, is this sort of coming up to, and I'm going to pull this back a little.
Yes, that's approaching closer to the door.
11, which way are we looking as we enter the door here on 11?
So you would be looking to the northeast, northeast.
And you had talked about in a diagram a hat. Is that sort of what we see here?
Correct.
Okay. Is Exhibit 12 sort of looking the opposite way from that sort of vantage point,
Correct.
or south?
South, southeast, yeah.
And does Exhibit 13 show us what the front entryway looks like?
Correct. So this image would have been taken from the northeast corner of the main room there.
We can see in this then the hat with the placard of 1.
Correct.
So when we are looking at your diagram, Exhibit 5, and we see the 1, that's what that's referring to.
Correct.
Exhibit 14, can you tell us our perspective of what we're looking at here?
So you're standing in roughly the northwest corner of the room, just down from the entryway, and you're looking south.
So we start to see some of those white cards there. Is this before you have added in the yellow placards?
Correct. This would have been part of the overall photographic effort.
So when we're looking at this house, and I'm going to put up Exhibit 15, can you describe for us this wall here, sort of, can you go all the way around that?
So that wall with the mirror itself is blocking where the kitchen is. There's an entrance to the kitchen to the right of that wall. And again, you could get to the kitchen through the left opening as well, but I think there's also like a family room by that area.
Okay. But it's open, one could walk through either of these ways and come around back out the opposite door?
Yes.
Okay. So Exhibit 16, we see Charles as he lay when fire has left him at this point.
Correct.
So the items we see on him, we've heard of them cutting his shirt and things like that. This is you documenting how he was when you started to come into the scene,
Correct.
after fire's already treated him and determined he was deceased.
Yes.
Over here, we start to see an area. What is right over there?
So just past that most southern index card is a hallway that extends to a bathroom and I believe at least 2 bedrooms.
Looking sort of to the north, what is this hallway here?
So now we're just looking north, past the entryway. You can see the hat in the right part of the image there, and that would lead up to the master bedroom garage.
When you are looking at a scene like this, where you have a shooter, are you wanting to document all the different views of the items and the victim where they lay in the scene?
Yes, it's important to establish where things were at when we found them.
Okay. Now, are you able to tell us, for instance, if a casing rolled or a bullet rolled as fire is there or initial officers coming through?
Having not been present to see it, I would not be able to tell you if any item happened to have been manipulated.
Okay. Does 19 show us part of that hallway that we're talking about to the bedrooms?
Yes, it does.
And then right next to it, would that be the sort of doorway into the kitchen?
Correct. Past this mirror on the left would be where the wall rounds a little bit and leads to the kitchen.
So Exhibit 21 here, we see this hat. Why, in 22, that you marked as number 1, why do you collect something like that?
The indications to me, initial assessment, was that there was some kind of a struggle that took place. And it was unknown at the time who the hat belonged to. So it was decided that this could be important.
Are you given more than one chance to go through a house and try to collect evidence, or is it sort of a one-time shot?
Usually it's a one-time shot.
So if you aren't sure if something is relevant, do you collect it?
Yes.
So that later, if you determine it is, you have it?
Correct.
And if you determine it's not, then no harm, no foul?
Well, I don't know about no foul, but yeah.
So in this case, did you know whose hat that was?
I did not.
Okay. I'm going to put up 15 first. In the diagram, we had seen a number over in this area. What was that?
The item should be marking the baseboard, and there is a bullet strike in the baseboard.
All right, I'm putting up 23 here, and then I'm going to put up 24. What are we looking at here?
So what you're looking at is the actual bullet strike where it peeled away a portion of the baseboard, but remained embedded in the baseboard.
So I'm going to put up, as we kind of go closer, 24, 25, 26. Did you eventually show in 27 that you guys pulled back some of that board to get to show what was embedded in there?
Correct. And at some point, we were needing to recover that projectile.
Okay. And so in 28, does this reflect, now you've kind of photographed what it looked like when you first saw it, and then as you peeled it back and the actual bullet or projectile that was removed from there?
Correct.
All right. And 29, show that bullet from a different angle?
Yes.
When you were looking at this, and I'm going to put 30 and 31, was there actually some sort of white paint transfer on part of that?
There's a little bit of transfer of material to the nose of the bullet, yes.
If I can have my paralegal approach with 243 and 245, or, sorry, 243 and 235. Detective, do you recognize what those are?
Yes, I do.
What are those?
This would be the section of baseboard that we removed from the wall. as well as the projectile that we had removed from the baseboard.
Okay, and I'm going to put up 34 here. Does that show sort of after you pulled out that section of that baseboard?
Yes, after it was cut out.
Okay. And then it's the projectile that you recovered in there? From that location, the other exhibit?
The other exhibit is the projectile that was recovered from there, yes.
State will move to admit 243 and 235.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
You said 243 and 245?
35.
Oh.
243 and 235.
It's ordered to make 243 and 235.
If I can have my paralegal go retrieve that. So, I'm going to put up, to give us again a different perspective, 17 here. We've talked about, as you're kind of working your way down, you told us you started with the hat, then you went over to the baseboard, and then you went back to the west wall.
Yes.
And so we see in this photograph, Exhibit 17, what you have marked as item 3. What was that?
That was the baseball bat.
I'm going to show Exhibit 35. Is that a closer up of that bat?
Yes, it is.
Were photographs taken of the sort of edge of the bat itself?
The fat edge, I guess.
The fat edge.
Here,
It's
I don't
colored
know
bats.
nomenclature of the bat, so yeah.
Not the handle. How's that?
Yes.
When you were looking at this, were you looking for any blood? And I'm going to put up 37, 38, 39, or any biological material.
We were looking for visible evidence, yes.
Okay. Did you observe any yourself?
I did not.
Did the edge look pristine and clean to you, visibly?
Visibly, I did not see any sort of biological evidence on it.
Did you note any biological evidence anywhere on the bat that was visible to you?
I did not.
If my paralegal can approach with 249. Do you recognize what 249 is?
Yes, I do.
And is that the bat that we have seen in these photos marked as item number 2 that we see here in Exhibit 35?
Yes.
State will move to admit 249, Your Honor.
Any objection? 248 and 249 are admitted.
So that was item number 3. I'm going to put up Exhibit 40. Do we see a placard there for number 4?
Yes.
And what was item number 4? And I'm going to put up Exhibit 42 here.
It is a full metal jacket projectile.
And in 43, does that show a different angle of that projectile?
Yes.
So this projectile was recovered to the east, maybe northeast of Charles Vallow?
Yes.
And was there any visible damage to this projectile?
There was some deformation to the projectile.
If I can have my paralegal approach with 239. Do you recognize 239?
Yes, I do.
And what is 239?
This would be what's identified in the picture as item number 4, the projectile that was found close to the body.
State will move to admit 239.
Objection.
No objection.
239's admitted.
When you are photographing the scene, are you, again, we know this is after fire has been there?
Yes.
Were you present when fire was there?
I believe their engine was still there when I arrived on scene, but they were not inside.
So were you present when they were working on Mr. Vallow in the home?
No,
So do you know whether or not they had moved this projectile at all?
I do not.
When you were looking at Mr. Vallow himself, I'm going to put up 41, did you notice something on his left hand?
On the left hand, yes.
What did you notice on his left hand?
Substance consistent with apparent blood.
When you were looking at Mr. Vallow, did you note any other blood on his left arm?
I did not see any.
And when you are looking at Mr. Vallow, are you looking at the rest of his body to see if you noted any blood on his right arm?
Correct. I did not see any on the right arm. I did not manipulate the body until the medical examiner showed up.
So visibly, as he laid there in that supine position on the back with his arms out, what you were able to see, did you see any other blood like we observed on his left hand anywhere else?
On his chest, there was a little bit of blood, but on his extremities, I did not see any.
And so when we talk about his chest, is this the blood that we see here, sort of?
Above and below the pads.
Okay. Did the blood to Mr. Vallow's left hand stand out to you in any way?
Yes, it was interesting that it's just on that one particular part, but it's not completely surprising.
Was there any blood on the floor around where his hand was?
No.
So although we've heard of blood pooling underneath him, there was no blood around his hand as it laid there.
Correct.
So going back again to Exhibit 17, we've now talked about 1, 2, 3, and 4, correct? Do we see
Yes.
a placard number 5 there?
Yes.
What was placard number 5? And I'm going to put up Exhibit 45 now.
It is a shell casing.
And I'm going to put up 46 to be closer of it. And 47. Were you able to determine what caliber that was?
Yes, it belonged to a .45 automatic pistol.
Okay. Now, as a police officer, do you have a semi-automatic pistol yourself?
At least one.
Okay. And I guess as a reserve officer, do you still have some?
I'm not a reserve officer. I'm just retired. But yes, I still possess firearms.
All right. So in terms of a semi-automatic handgun and seeing this type of casing, can you tell us when you fire a gun, where does this come from? What is that?
So in this particular image, we are looking at what's commonly called a head stamp. That's going to be the opposite end of where the actual projectile would be inserted into the casing. The circular ring that you see in the head stamp there is actually what's called the primer, and that's what the firing pin hits to initiate the primer charge, which ignites the powder and then sends the projectile through the barrel.
So if I put up 48 here, we have a projectile that goes through the barrel. What is this item here? This casing.
So this is what's left of the cartridge. So it's the casing. This is what holds the powder charge, it holds the primer, and it holds the projectile all in one unit until it's initiated with the firing pin striking the primer. After the charge starts the projectile down the barrel, then the most semi-automatic weapons will actually, the slide will start moving back to the rear, and there's a piece of the slide called an extractor that goes around that back rim of the projectile there, around the head stamp, and it pulls it backwards out of the chamber. And then it completes the cycle going all the way to the rear where it hits what's called an ejector, and that kicks the casing out of the gun and readies it to go forward, stripping a new cartridge off the magazine, if there is one, and loading that into the chamber ready for the next shot.
So when you fire the gun, projectile goes out the barrel and this casing gets kicked out.
Correct.
So I'm going to go back again to Exhibit 17 where we see 5. And I'm going to put up Exhibit 49. To the south of 5 here, did you find another casing?
Yes.
Is that what we see in Exhibit 49 and 50 as placard 6?
Yes, it is.
So were those located in the generally in the same location?
Fairly close to each other.
When a casing is ejected from a gun, do they just plop down and stay right where they landed?
No, there are many different types of firearms out there, so the casings can eject in different directions. Some will, or most will eject out to the right. Some will go farther back towards the right, some will go forward, some will go center, some actually kick higher up in the middle. It really depends on the manufacturer, the process, how the person's holding the firearm. So there are a lot of things about it, but there's usually sufficient energy designed in it so that it kicks the casing out so it doesn't interfere with the feeding of the next cartridge.
In your experience firing guns, can casings bounce or roll or move after they are ejected?
Yes.
Item that we see is number 6 and number 50 there. What caliber casing was that?
It's a little blurry.
Do you recall if it was the same 45 caliber as the other one?
They were both 45 caliber.
I can have approach with 238 and 240. Do you recognize 238 and 240?
Yes.
What are those?
These are the casings recovered from the main room where the body was.
What we saw as 5 and 6 in the exhibits?
That's correct.
State will move to admit 238 and 240.
Any objection to 248 and 240?
No objection.
248 and 240 are admitted.
238 and 240.
Oh, I'm sorry, 238 and 240? Okay, they're admitted.
Now, do the police move the body when you're processing the scene? Do you go around and move Mr. Vallow around?
No,
Do you have to wait for someone from the medical examiner's office to come do that?
that is correct.
Sort of the body is their responsibility?
Yes,
Are you present while they're doing that?
absolutely.
And are you looking for any other evidence that may be on, around, underneath Mr. Vallow?
Correct.
In this case, did the medical examiner's office come and remove Mr. Vallow's remains?
Yes, they did.
Once his remains were removed, did you document by photographing, we see here in 53, the blood that was left behind?
Yes, typically we would call this the void image to show what it looked like after the body has been removed.
Now, is the blood been moved somewhat by the body itself being moved?
Correct. Part of the process is the medical examiner's investigator will manipulate the body by rolling it from one side or the other to get a good look at the side that's not visible with how it was laying. And then they'll work on manipulating the body into the bag for transport.
So looking at the void or the blood pool that we see here, has it been altered somewhat from what we saw or observed while Mr. Vallow's body was there due to the movement of his remains?
That would be safe to say, yes.
Okay. Did you and other officers clean up that blood pool?
Yes.
And in doing so, did you observe anything on the floor?
Yes. Underneath, well, once the blood was cleared off, we could actually see a defect in the wooden floor that was consistent with the projectile strike.
All right, I've put up Exhibit 56. There's a placard number 13 there. Is that far away so we can see the location of where that is in perspective to the room?
Yes.
Having seen Mr. Vallow's remains in the room and then having them removed, were you able to determine approximately where this defect that we see marked as 13 was located in relation to Mr. Vallow's body?
Yes, it would have been consistent with being under his left shoulder.
Did you take closer up photos of that defect?
Yes.
I'm going to put up 59 that shows that placard. Is this what you were talking about?
That is correct.
How did you, well, let me ask you this. Did you look at the rest of the floor to see if there were anything else that looked like that?
Yes, that was a consideration, so we did look at the rest of the floor.
So you went through that whole room to see if you found any similar type of defects on it?
Correct.
Did you?
No.
So this was the only one that looked like that?
Yes.
And I'm going to put up 58. So we see other defects in the ground. What made this different?
The size of it, the directionality, the fact that it was directly underneath the shoulder where we observed an exit wound, and the fact that there was a projectile found on the floor in proximity to this defect.
Was it, let me ask you this. As a person who has processed crime scenes, fired guns themselves, did it appear to you consistent with a bullet strike?
Yes, it did.
And what were you basing that on?
The way the indentation is and how it tapers up, coming away from the body in the same direction that the projectile was located.
Did you and other detectives remove that piece of wood?
Yes, with great pain, yes.
All right, putting up Exhibit 60. Is that to show the piece removed, and Exhibit 61 to show the actual piece?
Correct.
And did you write on it so that you would be able to later look at that piece and know how that fit into the puzzle?
Yes, it was important to make sure to establish directionality on that piece.
If I can have my paralegal approach with 240. Oh, I'm sorry.
You don't want to? I do.
paralegal approach with 244? Do you recognize 244?
I do.
And is that the actual piece of floor that was removed from 5531 South Four Peaks Place?
Yes.
State will move to admit 244.
Any objection? 244 is admitted.
And is that what then we see here in Exhibit 61?
It is.
Obviously, this is inside plastic, but this is the piece you're talking about.
Correct.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the rest of the house, and then eventually I'm going to come back to this. You told us that...
Would now be a good time to take our
Sure.
afternoon recess? Since we're close to 3, why don't we take our afternoon recess, stretch break, et cetera? Please remember the admonition. We'll resume in about 15 minutes.
All rise for the jury. What did you note here?
So there was again another bag, and more specifically, there was a pistol that was laying on the floor.
We start with 72 here. Was that just like a garbage bag with some clothes in it?
Yes.
So of more relevance to you was what was next to it?
Correct.
What did you find there? What is this orange thing there? And we see a whole lot of placard numbers.
Right. So the placard numbers are obviously identifying particular items that are going to be seized as evidence. That we have the orange bag with what appears to be a gun box inside, and then we have the pistol. And the 3 placards next to the pistol are specific for the pistol itself, the magazine from the pistol, and potentially the chambered round in the pistol.
Okay. So 74, is that a close-up of that pistol?
It is.
What kind of pistol was that?
Pardon.
What caliber was it?
It's a 45.
Is that the same caliber as the casings that you had found in the front room next to Charles?
Yes.
Does this show another angle of that pistol in 75?
Yes, looking at the top of the pistol.
When the pistol, as we see, is picked up in 76, the individual's wearing gloves. Why is that?
Again, to help preserve the evidence in the event that DNA were to need to be done, we could articulate that we did not touch it with our bare hands to impart our DNA onto it.
Are you visually looking at this gun to see, and this is 77, if there is any visible biological evidence, blood on this gun?
Yes, we do look at them to help determine that.
And did you observe any biological evidence, any blood or what appeared to be blood on this handgun?
No, ma'am.
If you had observed that, would you have noted it and photographed it and documented it?
Yes.
Now, when you got this gun, was it loaded?
Yes.
And in 78 and 79, is that photographs of the magazine in the gun?
Correct.
So when we talk about the magazine, I'm going to go back to showing Exhibit 76. Where is that in this picture?
So you can see the base of the magazine at the bottom of the grip, close to what would be the individual's left thumb. There's that black piece of plastic that extends horizontally across the base of the grip.
And so that's the magazine that you then took out that we see in 79.
Correct.
Okay. And why is the magazine removed?
Well, we have to make the weapon safe, and that's the first step in making it safe, is to remove any more source of ammunition that could feed into it.
Was there a cartridge or a live round in the chamber?
Yes.
So how do you make that safe then?
Well, the only way you can is to manipulate the slide to force the extractor to pull the cartridge out, and the ejector kicks the cartridge out.
Okay. Also in this photo, there was this orange bag, and you had told us that inside of it, we can kind of see the corner here. We see it better in 82. Did you remove an item from that orange bag?
Yes.
And I'm going to show 83, 84. What is that we see there?
That is a gun box that is consistent with the firearm that was laying on the floor.
So consistent with the .45 caliber handgun.
Correct.
And that was inside this orange bag. Was there any live rounds, and I'm going to show you Exhibit 85, also in that orange bag?
Yes.
And a closer up of that, was that another .45 caliber round?
It is.
And so when we say it was live, it hadn't been fired yet.
Yeah, cartridge has not been fired.
We start then by having my paralegal can take up exhibits 237 and 246. You can approach them at 237 and 246. Do you recognize 237 and 246?
Yes.
And is that the gun and the magazine that we see here in Exhibit 76?
It is.
The gun that was found in that pink room?
Correct.
State will move to admit 237 and 246.
Any objection?
Is Mr. Coons saying that he didn't take those, but he recognizes them from being in evidence? Is that correct?
I think he testified he recognizes them to be the same items from the scene.
No objection.
237 and
246.
237 and 246 are admitted.
Now I have my paralegal approach with 247, 248, and 236. Sorry. Do you recognize 247, 248, and 236?
Yes, I do.
And are those what we saw in Exhibit 83, the gun case, as well as in 73, the orange bag that the gun case was in, and what we see in 85, the single live round that was found inside that bag?
Correct.
State will move to admit 247, 248, and 236.
Any objection?
Just a foundation, Your Honor. If he could give a serial number or something that could authenticate those?
Well, he testified that those were the items that he recovered from the scene, so I guess you can question him about that on cross. Give me the numbers again.
247, 248, and 236.
Those items are admitted.
I'm going to show you, as you continued sort of in this hallway, Exhibit 88. Can you put us into perspective of where that is? I'm going to put 19 sort of back up. Where is what we see, this room with the blue on it, Exhibit 88?
So those two doorways would be on the south side of the hallway that leads up to the pink or maroon room. Specifically, the blue one would be the most southwestern bedroom of the home, and then the other doorway is to the hall bathroom.
Okay. So again, did you go into this blue room, and look for any potential items of evidence?
Yes.
So in the room with the sort of child themes on it, did you find anything bloody in there?
No, ma'am.
Any ammunition in there?
No.
In the pink room, we saw the gun. Did you look in the floor of that room to see if there was any blood drops in the pink room?
Yes.
So I'm going to go back 1 second to 87. So on this floor and the bed and around here, did you notice any blood in that room?
No.
No blood swiped across a wall?
No.
No blood on that orange case?
The orange bag?
Correct.
No.
No blood on the black case for the gun?
No.
Or the extra magazines that were in there, any blood on those?
No. None seen.
Okay. So then in the blue room, did you do the same sort of thing? Look to see if there was any bloody clothing, any blood swipes, any blood drops, that sort of thing in there?
Correct. No items of bloody anything was discovered in there.
Okay. And nothing on the floor either?
Correct.
When we go to 92, you said that was the hall bathroom next to it?
Yes.
Do we see that in 93 and 94 here?
Yes.
Did you look in everything, like even the sinks, to see if you saw blood there?
Yes.
Along the countertop to see if you saw blood there?
Correct.
Did you note any bloody items, that was anywhere in that bathroom?
I did not.
When you were walking down that hallway to those rooms, did you look on the floor there to see if there were any blood drops or blood trails or swipes of blood on the wall?
Yes.
Did you observe any there?
No.
So 98 here, can you put us in perspective of what we're seeing?
So this would be towards the feet of the body, where the hall splits to the kitchen and then to the bedrooms that we were just discussing.
Okay. 99, is this like a lanyard that was hanging on the wall there?
Yes.
So it wasn't knocked off or anything?
No, it's where we found it.
And as you go through 99 there, is that how you entered, one of the ways you could enter into the kitchen?
Correct.
And is this sort of a view of that?
Yes.
So in the kitchen, did you look on the floor there to see if there were any blood drops?
Yes.
along the cabinets to see if there were blood drops there.
Yes.
When you got to the sink, I'm going to put exhibit 103 and then 104. Did you observe a small amount of what appeared to be blood on the faucet itself?
Yes.
Did you look sort of as well in the sink itself to see if there was any blood there?
Yes.
Did you observe any there?
Did not see any visible blood.
Now, when you're going through the house and looking to see if you note any bloody items or any other items of evidence, are you looking in things like trash cans?
Yes.
So was this the trash can in the kitchen, for instance?
Yes.
And did you note any bloody rags or towels or anything thrown in there?
No, ma'am.
Okay. You said that there was also sort of a living area in there.
Correct.
I'm going to put up exhibit 112 to get a better perspective of that. So is this the doorway we were talking about?
Yes.
And so the kitchen here opens up into the living room.
Correct.
Did you look through that area to see if you saw any blood on the floors?
Yes.
Did you observe any?
No.
Did you look through that area to see if there was any blood on any of the furniture or walls or anything like that?
Yes.
Did you observe any of that?
No.
In exhibit 111, where does this doorway lead?
That leads back out to the mirrored room, the main room where the body is.
So when we were talking about the two doorways, one sort of directly into the kitchen and the other sort of more towards the end of the kitchen living area.
Yes.
This is what you were talking about.
Correct.
And in exhibit 113, can we see sort of both of those doorways?
Yes.
Okay. And 114, a overall perspective of that.
Another perspective of it, yes.
So throughout this whole area, again, you're looking for anything that might be relevant because you have one chance to document it, correct?
Correct.
When we talk about 115 and we talked about the original layout of the house, is this that front entrance area again?
Yes, it is.
And where are we looking in this perspective?
So you were looking in a north direction.
Where does that head towards?
It heads towards the garage, the master bedroom, and I believe a room that could double as an office.
Okay. So when we go along this wall here that we see in 115, 116, 117, is this the sort of what we would call office or playroom?
Yes.
Okay. Did you look through there, see anything bloody in there?
We looked and found nothing.
Was there like a powder room in this area?
Yes,
And did you search that as well?
it was.
And again, you're looking in sinks and in trash cans?
Correct.
And did you observe in 121, 122, the trash can and toilet and sink, any bloody items there?
No,
Was there a laundry room in this area?
there was.
And I'm putting up 123 and 124. Did you look through the laundry area to see if you saw any bloody items in here?
It was looked through, yes.
So although there's some clothing and some folded towels, none of those had blood evidence on them.
Nothing that stood out with blood evidence, no.
And then again, even looking in the trash cans that we see in 126 and 127,
Correct.
One 128, are we now heading into the master bedroom?
Yes,
129, was there sort of an office set up in there as well, 130?
correct.
And are you, again, looking through the floor, looking everywhere for any items of evidence?
Correct. Anything to indicate that what happened in the other room transferred into this.
Okay. Or any cleanup from after it?
Correct.
As you went through this, did you do the same sort of thing, looking through the floor and walls, 132, 133, for any blood evidence?
Correct.
Did you observe any in the bedroom?
No.
Do you go into the master bathroom and check there as well?
Yes.
So 134, 135. Did you observe any evidence, blood evidence in the master bathroom?
It did not.
And again, checking even the toilet itself as well as the trash can
Yes.
that we see in 137 and 138. So other than the one drop or whatever smear of blood on the kitchen faucet, did you see any other blood evidence at the scene?
No.
Let me put that in a different way, other than what was around Charles's remains.
Correct. No trails, no swipes, nothing that other than the sink faucet in the kitchen and the area where the body was.
Okay. So you told us that you cleaned up the blood there and you saw that defect in the ground that was consistent, or in the flooring, that was consistent with a bullet strike, correct?
Correct.
When you were looking at this scene, actually I'm going to start with 15, did you note injuries to Charles Vallow himself?
Yes.
On the front of him, where did you note the gunshot wounds to him?
Immediately before the medical examiner arrived, the only visible gunshot wound was in the lower left abdomen area.
Did you learn one was in the chest underneath some of the medical debris?
Yes.
When you are looking at this scene, are you able to utilize part of your shooting reconstruction training to try to determine any type of trajectory, or if anything is consistent with trajectory based upon the scene itself, items that you are able to view there?
I do try to apply my knowledge of that to the scenes as I go to them and go through them, and with whatever evidence or information comes directly back to me.
Are you relying on, for instance, the location of Mr. Vallow?
That's part of it.
Are you relying on the location of the casings?
That's another part of it. Not a major part, but it is another part.
Are you relying on the location of the projectiles?
Yes.
When the medical examiner came, were you also able to see exit wounds on Mr. Vallow?
Yes, in conjunction with also the chest wound.
Okay. So when the medical examiner came, you saw a second injury to the front side of him.
Correct.
And where was that approximately?
In the sternum.
So for us, somewhere in...
About the center, maybe roughly the center of the chest.
Okay. So, and the other one you said was in the abdomen.
Yes.
When the medical examiner was there, where did you observe other gunshot wounds on his back?
I observed another one that would have been just to the left of the spine, and then another one that would have been by the left shoulder blade scapula area.
Okay. Now, given the number of casings, did you start with an idea that there might be two shots?
Yes.
Given the number of wounds on Mr. Vallow, did that appear consistent with that theory?
Very much so.
So 2 entrances, 2 exits?
Yes.
When you saw the projectile that you recovered, that we see in Exhibit 20 on the side over here, that entered into that baseboard, given the injuries to Mr. Vallow and the projectiles and the location of this, were you able to determine any consistencies of where the shooter may have been when that occurred?
Approximate location, yes.
And how did you do that?
Based on the wounds to Mr. Vallow, the location of where the projectile had ended up, and where the casings were, the working theory at that point was that the the firearm ejected the casings to the right, striking the wall where that has the curve there, and bounced back towards the west wall. The projectile would have continued on a relatively straight path and embedded itself in the baseboard at the other end of the room.
So would that have put the shooter somewhere in this area?
Yes.
And so that, to you, seemed consistent with one of the shots having gone through him and ended up what we see in Exhibit 20 over here in the baseboard, Mr. Vallow being somewhere over in this area.
Correct.
Okay. Given the information that you obtained, let me ask you this. Given the information that you saw at the scene there, again, with the casings, the injuries to Mr. Vallow, both to the abdomen and the shoulder, and then after you cleaned up the blood, the damage to the floor underneath the location of his left shoulder, were you able at that point to start, have any concept or have an idea of what would be consistent with where the shooter may have been and where Mr. Vallow may have been for that shot?
Yes.
What did you base that on?
Again, a lot of the factors that have been discussed, the location of the projectile item, number 4, the defect in the floor that was underneath him, the location of the second casing. It was all consistent with the shooter having been at the feet, not necessarily right upon the feet of Mr. Vallow, but in that direction, close enough so that the projectile could, again, bounce off that wall and land on the west wall.
The projectile or the?
Or the casing, sorry.
When you were looking at this scene, I'm going to put 56 up. Obviously, there's no exact, I'm going to move Mr. Vallow this way just to kind of be looking the same direction. Did this defect appear to be in the area of Mr. Vallow's shoulder?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Vallow had been rolled a couple times by the time you cleaned that scene up.
Yes.
So you didn't like stick a rod through him there and see if that worked?
No, that would be inappropriate.
Are you even allowed to do that?
No.
Is a medical examiner frown on that?
Yes, the body is theirs by law.
So you're basically able to look at where he was located and say that that is consistent with being underneath his left shoulder.
Yes, and we did take measurements of the body before it was moved.
All right. So when you measured where the body was and then you cleaned up that blood and measured where that projectile divot was that consistent with where his left shoulder was?
Yes.
Given that information that you had at that time, were you able to draw any conclusions as to whether or not the evidence was consistent with Charles Vallow being laying on the ground when he was shot?
Very much so in the position that you see him. He was the second shot that entered the abdomen would have been where he was lying.
Did you attend the autopsy itself?
I did.
And when you were at can you tell us what it means when you attend an autopsy as a detective?
So as a detective, we go to the medical examiner on the date that they're going to do the autopsy. There is the autopsy suite itself where the doctors and technicians work with the bodies. Observers will be outside of that suite but able to communicate with the staff. There's a window where we can see everything that's going on. And like I said, we can communicate either by a phone that's on the wall or they'll come around and talk with us. We have the ability to observe everything that transpires. There's even a camera overhead that we can manipulate to get a different view, say the feet are toward the way.
I was going to say inches.
Yes.
Not feet, but inches.
Correct.
And so would that be a normal trajectory from hitting the wall to where they landed?
I am not surprised by seeing that, yes.
According to how fast they would be going. How fast does a casing come out of a gun. I don't really know.
I've never chronographed a casing coming out of a gun. I've only chronographed bullets. So I have no idea how fast a casing comes out. It doesn't come out with enough force to really hurt anybody.
So there weren't any divots in the wall or anything like that because,
There could be microscopic divots, but it'd be very difficult to find.
and you didn't find any that were visible to the eye.
Nothing that's caught my eye, no.
So were you there at the time when Alex did the walkthrough?
Yes, ma'am?
And so you were there. Did he describe where he was standing?
Sustained.
Did he show you physically where he was standing?
Sustained.
Was there a wall right next to where he was standing?
Sustained.
Your Honor, I'm not asking for the truth of the matter asserted. I'm saying he observed this person standing in that place.
Well, you can ask him if he observed Mr. Cox standing in that place.
Okay. Did you observe Mr. Cox standing in the room where he told you that the gun was?
I observed him standing in the vicinity that he indicated.
And was that in the hallway or in the main room?
No, I'm going to object to hearsay. It's non-testimonial,
Right.
but it is still hearsay.
If the question is in relation to Mr. Cox showing or recreating or demonstrating, then the objection is sustained.
Where did you observe Mr. Cox standing when he went through the walkthrough to?
Well, that's the testimony that I'm saying is a form of hearsay. So please ask a different question.
I'm trying to understand, Your Honor. So what the witness observed is not relevant?
I didn't say that. Let's do a sidebar.
Okay, I would love that. Detective Coons, where would you place the shooter standing in that room?
I would place the shooter in the area of where the curve of the wall was in the kind of the hallway entry area, somewhere in that general area.
So would you have it, what direction would you place him standing? Facing, I mean. Not standing, but facing.
For which shot?
The first one.
The first one in a more northeasterly direction.
And the second?
In a more northern direction with a slight deviation to the east.
So would you have him stepping forward? Is that what you're saying?
No.
What direction would you have him moving?
I didn't say the shooter moved.
You're just saying that he shot from a different angle?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you think he was standing in the same location?
I don't know that.
So according to where you put him standing with the first shot, the casing bounced off of the wall to the right and landed to the left.
Correct.
And then where you have him standing in the second shot, the same thing happened.
Approximately, yes.
And how far apart were those casings found?
I don't have the specific measurement of how far apart they were. They were a few feet.
So they're a few feet apart.
Yes.
So if he was standing in the same place, would they be a few feet apart or would they be closer?
It depends on a different amount of things, like how was the gun being held? Was it canted to the side? Was it not? What the angle was. Could the shooter have moved? A little, but it would have been the same general vicinity.
But you said he didn't move, according to you.
I said I didn't say he moved.
So he could have moved because they were more than a foot apart, the casings found.
A little, yes. Would have been in the same general area.
So he could have taken a couple steps.
Perhaps. Could have slid the body sideways. Anything that you can do to the body, it could have been done in a short area.
And is that common in, I don't know with shooting, if is that common with someone to shoot once and then move and shoot again?
I'll sustain it on speculation.
In your experience as a firearms expert who fires a lot of guns, right? Would that be a common thing to do?
An objection is to speculation as to when, where, circumstances.
All right, I'll sustain the objection as to speculation.
Let's talk about stippling. The first shot, according to you, had stippling. Is that correct?
No,
It did not have any stippling.
none was observed.
And the second shot,
None was observed.
no stippling was observed.
Correct.
Is that what's in the ME's report?
I believe so.
That there was no stippling? Can I have a minute, Your Honor? Detective Coons, you were the scene agent that day on scene, is that correct?
Primarily, yes.
Did you work for someone else before Chandler Police Department?
United States Army, Arizona Department of Corrections, a couple other little jobs after I got out of the Army.
Did you work for Gilbert Police Department at all?
No.
And as the scene agent that day, you talked about, you were there. Did you write a report about that day?
Yes, ma'am.
When did you write that report?
I don't know the day I sat down to write it. It was shortly after the event,
So close to July 11th, 2019?
close to it.
Within a week, maybe?
Again, I don't recall when I specifically started typing that.
arrived that day, who was there already?
Patrol officers?
Just them?
The fire department might have been there. Alex Cox was there. Other detectives arrived. I couldn't tell you the order of which everybody arrived.
And where did you park?
I parked north of the scene.
And then did you go directly into the house?
No, ma'am.
What did you do first?
We received a briefing of what patrol officers had learned. We learned that there was a body inside the residence, and we came up with an investigative plan.
Who did that debriefing to you?
I don't think anybody specifically ran the debriefing. We, as detectives, gathered around the patrol officers, and they informed us basically of what they had seen and what they had been told.
And who were those detectives with you?
Well, Detective Duncan would have been there with me. Detective Moffett would have been there. I didn't take a roll call of all the detectives there. Possibly Detective Inclin. I don't know.
Okay. And then where did you proceed after that debriefing?
Well, after the debriefing, I provided the information of what I had learned to Detective Kaminsky, who is still back at the police department, and gave him the information necessary to request a search warrant for the residence.
And then what?
We waited.
To get the search warrant?
Yes, ma'am.
To have it issued?
To see if the judge would issue it, yes.
And how long did that take?
Don't believe we got word back from the courts until it would have been probably between 11:30, 11:45, and then we made entry shortly thereafter.
So is it your protocol that you can't enter until the search warrant is issued?
That is what we do once the scene has been made secure, yes.
Okay. And then when you entered, who entered with you?
Myself, the crime scene tech, we were the initial ones. I think Detective Duncan might have come in with us as well, but that would have been the extent of the initial entry.
Do you know the name of the crime scene tech that was with you?
Jordan,
Is that the last name or first name?
the last name.
And then what did you do after that?
Well, after that, we continued to go with our normal process of having photographs taken. I did the lizard Q spheres. I completed getting information necessary for the diagram that was presented, and continued to just do our job.
So is that protocol to do photographs first?
That would be our protocol, yes.
And then what do you do after that? I know that you were searching for the blood in all the rooms. When did that occur?
That occurs after the initial photographs are done, and then we can walk through and look in the particular areas that's been photographed already.
Okay, so the photographs are finished and then you guys kind of walk through.
Or at least finished in an area that we can actually walk through, yes.
Okay. And then when did you set up the tripod after, how long after that?
So the tripod was set up after the area had been photographed. So that way I wasn't interfering with anything. And that way we're not having the tripod in our original photographs.
Right, makes sense. And do you think, so Detective Duncan was with you going through the house?
I believe he was there, yes.
So it was basically the two of you or three of you going through room by room, or were you split up, or how does that work?
We would have divided and conquered a little bit to make the search a little bit more expedient. But that, again, you're slowed to the time frame of what it takes to do the overall photographs.
So the photographs took about how long?
I don't ever look at my watch to see how long it takes because it's a big house, as you're aware. And I let the crime scene tech do their job. I don't push them and tell them that TikTok, there's nothing like that. It's do your job, we'll follow along.
Okay, and you guys started that process at about 11:45?
I think the actual time would have been closer to noon that we would have started that process.
And about how long did it take to go through the whole house, and about how long was that process?
Again, for me, I don't document how long it takes for any particular task because each scene is different. I just focus on doing the tasks. I rarely take a look at my watch to see how much time I'm spending on it because I want to do the job. I don't care about the time it takes.
And you did not pick up any of the evidence that was marked. That wasn't part of your protocol, is to take the evidence into custody. Is that correct?
Most of the evidence I did not pick up, correct.
And whose job is that?
We usually defer to the crime scene techs to do that. There are times that we will assist them with doing it depending on what the item is.
So that day, was it Jordan who did that? Was he the crime scene tech that took that evidence?
She would have been the one that was collecting at our direction, yes.
And so you kind of pointed out as the detectives, and then they pick it up and...
Correct, because they're trained how to handle evidence, how to package evidence, how to process. So we work in tandem together. We're the investigative body, and they're the scientific portion of it.
Makes sense. Okay, what time do you think that well, let's ask this. After you're done with the photos, and then you're done with checking the house, and all of the evidence is picked up and logged, then what else do you do at the house? What else did you do at the house that day?
Well, you just bundled that up into like tiny little package, but it took a long time to get to the point that you're talking about. So my day pretty much involved the scene. As far as ancillary jobs to go somewhere else or do other things, no, my day was pretty much spent there on Four Peaks.
Correct. Yeah. So when did you leave the residence then?
We secured from the house sometime between 4 and 4:30 p.m.
And what other tasks did I miss that you accomplished during that 12 o'clock to the 4:30 time? I just don't know what you were doing in there. I'm just wondering.
Well, we identify the the evidence items. We're looking for other evidence items. I am still doing the diagram, so measurements need to be done. We have to wait for the medical examiner to arrive because we can't do anything with the body until they show up. And then once they show up, we pretty much stop with the other projects until we can focus on the body and get the body out of there because there aren't very many investigators for the medical examiner in the county, so we don't want to tie them up longer than we have to. And then we'll resume searching or identifying information, evidence, collecting it, and working our way to a conclusion where we can leave the scene.
Okay. So after searching the whole entire house, did you guys search the backyard at all?
It was searched.
Did you do that, or did someone else do
I
that?
did not.
Who would have been in the backyard searching?
It would have either been another detective or we would have asked an officer to do it.
And what would they be looking for?
Any blood evidence, anything to indicate, based upon the information we had of the event that took place inside that house.
So when you made your assessment, you were able to leave after that assessment was made? That everything was accomplished?
What assessment are you talking about?
That all the evidence was gathered and collected?
That I was satisfied that we had collected what we needed to collect?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
We could just have Ms. Vallow move her reports away from the camera it's showing.
Oh, is it showing?
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's, actually, let's just turn that off until we need it. Thank you.
So you stated earlier that the type of weapon that was found was a .45 caliber?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that a semi-automatic?
It is.
Okay. How is that different from like a revolver? What's the difference between that?
The build itself, I like to use simplistic terms when I describe what a revolver looks like. Most people are familiar with a Western movie. So the wheel gun, that's a revolver. What you see modern police officers carrying these days are semi-autos. So that's kind of the analogy I give to people that don't know guns.
And what's the difference between when you're shooting a semi-automatic or shooting a revolver, how fast you can shoot? Does that make sense?
The speed on which somebody can shoot is dependent upon the shooter themselves. The skill level they have, the weapon they might be using. There are a lot of circumstances and things that happen to be able to qualify that statement.
Right. And you have taken many gun classes, right, that we heard of?
And I'm an instructor, yes.
And you're an instructor. So when you're taking a gun class, is it common for them to say, is it common that they tell you to shoot center mass? Is that a common term?
That is what we train as police officers, is to shoot center mass. It has the highest probability of guaranteeing a hit on the adversary that you're trying to shoot.
Right. So if you were being attacked, you should point at center mass. Is that correct?
That is what's trained, and because stress can obviously create issues, but yes.
Is it a common term to say to center mass?
No,
In training?
that is something that I've heard, but I wouldn't classify it as common.
Would you teach that in your class?
It depends on what class is and what we're actually doing. If it's standard officers, no, I don't tell them to always shoot to center mass, no.
If it was a novice who was like taking a gun class for the first time, would you teach them that?
No.
What would you teach them?
You would teach them to shoot till the threat went away, and that can be with one shot. It can be with more than one shot.
Okay, that's fair. So in this particular gun, the .45, when the shells are ejected, where do they go?
Out and away.
So in this particular gun, do they go to the right or to the left?
I have not test fired this particular gun. I believe that most semi-automatics do eject the casings out to the right. Whether it's high right, low right, I'm not sure. It could be farther forward, it could be farther back. I did not test fire this gun, so I cannot speak specifically to how this particular gun ejects, other than most likely to the right.
But it could go to the left?
No, not the way the ejection port is set up.
So no guns that are .45s could go to the left?
Certainly, you could have a left-handed gun set up that it would eject that way, but the way this particular gun is set up, the ejection port dictates which way that's going to go. When the slide cycles back and that extractor pulls the casing back, the ejector is usually located on the opposite side of the extractor, and that will kick it out of the actual ejection port of the slide.
So for someone like me who doesn't really understand guns too well, you would say that a right-handed gun, they would eject out of the right, but a left-handed gun, they could eject out of the left.
And they're very rare to see.
And do people have left-handed guns? I guess I never really thought about that.
Some people do.
If you're left-handed, you'd want that, I guess. Okay. So in this particular case, when you said in your report that the shells bounced off the wall, they had gone to the right, like they were supposed to. Is that correct?
That is what I was operating off of, yes.
And then they would have bounced to the left.
Yes, because that makes sense.
And they would have landed to the left of my husband. Is that where they were found?
Along the west wall.
Okay. But how close to the wall were they found?
The pictures show where they were found. They're relatively close to the wall, inches away.
I was going to say inches.
Yes.
Not feet, but inches.
Correct.
And so would that be a normal trajectory from hitting the wall to where they landed?
I am not surprised by seeing that, yes.
According to how fast they would be going. How fast does a casing come out of a gun? I don't really know.
I've never chronographed a casing coming out of a gun. I've only chronographed bullets. So I have no idea how fast a casing comes out. It doesn't come out with enough force to really hurt anybody.
So there weren't any divots in the wall or anything like that because,
There could be microscopic divots, but it'd be very difficult to find.
and you didn't find any that were visible to the eye.
Nothing that caught my eye, no.
So were you there at the time when Alex did the walkthrough?
Yes, ma'am?
And so you were there. Did he describe where he was standing?
Sustained.
Did he show you physically where he was standing?
Sustained.
Was there a wall right next to where he was standing?
Sustained.
Your Honor, I'm not asking for the truth of the matter asserted. I'm saying he observed this person standing in that place.
Well, you can ask him if he observed Mr. Cox standing in that place.
Okay. Did you observe Mr. Cox standing in the room where he told you that the gun was?
I observed him standing in the vicinity that he indicated.
And was that in the hallway or in the main room?
No, I'm going to object to hearsay. It's non-testimonial,
Right.
but it is still hearsay.
If the question is in relation to Mr. Cox showing or recreating or demonstrating, then the objection is sustained.
Where did you observe Mr. Cox standing when he went through the walkthrough to?
Well, that's the testimony that I'm saying is a form of hearsay. So please ask a different question.
I'm trying to understand, Your Honor. So what the witness observed is not relevant?
I didn't say that. Let's do a sidebar.
Okay, I would love that. Detective Coons, where would you place the shooter standing in that room?
I would place the shooter in the area of where the curve of the wall was in the kind of the hallway entry area, somewhere in that general area.
So would you have it, what direction would you place him standing? Facing, I mean. Not standing, but facing.
For which shot?
The first one.
The first one in a more northeasterly direction.
And the second?
In a more northern direction with a slight deviation to the east.
So would you have him stepping forward? Is that what you're saying?
No.
What direction would you have him moving?
I didn't say the shooter moved.
You're just saying that he shot from a different angle?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you think he was standing in the same location?
I don't know that.
So according to where you put him standing with the first shot, the casing bounced off of the wall to the right and landed to the left.
Correct.
And then where you have him standing in the second shot, the same thing happened.
Approximately, yes.
And how far apart were those casings found?
I don't have the specific measurement of how far apart they were. They were a few feet.
So they're a few feet apart.
Yes.
So if he was standing in the same place, would they be a few feet apart or would they be closer?
It depends on a different amount of things, like how was the gun being held? Was it canted to the side? Was it not? What the angle was. Could the shooter have moved? A little, but it would have been in the same general vicinity.
But you said he didn't move, according to you.
I said I didn't say he moved.
So he could have moved because they were more than a foot apart, the casings found.
A little, yes. Would have been in the same general area.
So he could have taken a couple steps.
Perhaps. Could have slid the body sideways. Anything that you can do to the body, it could have been done in a short area.
And is that common in, I don't know with shooting, if is that common with someone to shoot once and then move and shoot again?
I'll sustain it on speculation.
In your experience as a firearms expert who fires a lot of guns, right? Would that be a common thing to do?
An objection is to speculation as to when, where, circumstances.
All right, I'll sustain the objection as to speculation.
Let's talk about stippling. The first shot, according to you, had stippling. Is that correct?
No,
It did not have any stippling.
none was observed.
And the second shot,
None was observed.
no stippling was observed.
Correct.
Is that what's in the ME's report?
I believe so.
That there was no stippling? Can I have a minute, Your Honor? When you were observing the autopsy, the ME didn't say anything about stippling?
I don't recall any mention about stippling.
And you didn't have a discussion with him about it?
We would have if he'd observed any.
And so if he said that, to someone else, you would be surprised?
I don't know what he had in his notes. I didn't author his report.
Can you describe stippling for us? What that is?
Sure. It's basically a combination of particles that come out from behind or follow the projectile as it exits the barrel. A lot of times it's partial burned or unburned powder, and it's a short distance phenomena, so the person has to be extremely close for the pattern to actually present itself and the particles embed in the clothing or the skin.
So if stippling was found, how far away would the gun have to be from the victim
That depends on the gun.
on this .45 semi-automatic?
I am not an expert on the stippling patterns. That is something that we would have to send to the lab for. And what they would do is they would test it with witness panels at different distances to give that information.
Is there an estimate?
That's where it would come in. Usually the medical examiner, if they observe stippling, will give an estimate of close or contact.
So would you be surprised if he said 2 to 4 feet?
If that's what he says.
That if there's stippling, then the gun would have to be 2 to 4 feet.
It's possible, but I wouldn't hold my hat on that, no. I would have to have the gun tested for that.
Okay. And so,
Is this a good spot to break for the evening?
sure, Your Honor.
I mean, I'm not cutting you off. If you want to ask a few more questions, that's fine.
Nope, that's fine.
All right, we'll take our evening recess. Members of the jury, please remember the admonition. I'll remind you to specifically avoid any outside information, any information about this case outside this courtroom. And we'll see you tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Thank you.
Detective Coons, I know we didn't really establish yesterday. I know that you're retired. Is that okay if I call you Detective Coons, or would you prefer something else?
Detective is fine.
Okay, thank you. Detective Coons, yesterday you testified that no stippling was found as a result of the shot on my husband's chest. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, none was found.
Okay. So would it surprise you if the medical examiner expressed in his defense interview that there was stippling found in that shot?
Would it surprise me that he had found it? Not necessarily based on the information.
Okay. Would it surprise you if the medical examiner expressed that the shooter would have had to be 2 to 4 feet away for that stippling to be present?
And this is from your interview or from the report?
From the interview.
Okay. No, that actually would still be consistent with my observations at the scene.
Okay, great. If someone very muscular like my husband were 2 to 4 feet away from you holding up a bat, would you consider that a threat?
Can I object to speculation, relevance?
Your Honor, I'm asking for his opinion as a professional and as a firearms expert.
He's not, okay.
That goes to the ultimate
hold on.
decision.
The objection is sustained and it calls for a legal conclusion.
It calls for a legal conclusion?
Yes, move on.
Were you present, Detective, when my husband was shot?
No, ma'am.
Is there a video recording of it?
To my knowledge, no.
So is your opinion then an educated guess about what really happened?
It's based on known facts.
Okay. Were you aware, Detective, that my husband and my brother were very good friends?
No, ma'am, I didn't know the relationship.
Did you know that they hung out and played golf together?
Objection, relevance?
Sustained.
Your Honor, I'm going somewhere with this.
Well, I
My
guess,
follow-up question will explain.
I guess you can answer if you knew that they played golf.
I did not know.
In all of your investigation of my life, you never came across this information?
Objection relevance.
Sustained.
Are you familiar with my husband's wishes for his funeral?
Objection relevance.
Sustained.
Did you learn in your investigation that he named my brother Alex as one of his 5 best friends?
And I'm going to object again to relevance.
Sustained.
Did you read the reports in this case?
I did not read all of the reports in this case. No, I've read mine and I've authored mine, but I have not read the other reports.
None of the other reports except for your own?
That's correct.
Okay. Detective, are you familiar with the follow-up report you wrote dated July 29th, 2019?
You're going to have to be a little bit more specific.
Did you review your reports in preparation for your testimony here today?
Yes, but I have not memorized the dates of when I made a report entry.
Okay. Would you like to see it to refresh your recollection?
That would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does that look like a true and correct copy of your report, Detective?
I believe it is.
And those Bates pages run from what to what, please?
They're obscured in the footnotes of it, but it looks like it's 126 through 131.
Okay. And on the last page of your report, on Bates page 131, you explain what a shored wound is.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you read that underlined portion?
I'm going to object to hearsay to reading it.
Sustained. You can ask him to explain what a shored wound is.
Okay. Can you explain to us what the shored wound is that you explained in your report?
Yes, a shored wound would be a wound created as an exit wound where the projectile is exiting the body and the body is either up against a firm surface or firm material like spandex type thing. That's how it's been explained to me.
Okay. That's fair. You said held in place by tight clothing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you, in fact, and it says in your report, did you, in fact, collect my husband's clothing?
Yes.
Okay. And you took the clothing, it says, to the property storage facility. Is that correct?
Yes, it went to a drying cage.
Okay. Detective, are you familiar with bamboo clothing?
I can't say that I am.
Okay. Were you aware that on July 29th, 2019, my husband was wearing a $200 bamboo workout shirt?
Objection to relevance.
He can answer if he knows.
I have no idea what the cost is.
Are you aware that bamboo is a heavy-duty fabric, not to rip or tear except under extreme conditions?
I've not done any research into bamboo fabric.
Okay. So could this fabric of his shirt have caused the wound to be short?
It could have been a contributor, but it would not have been in this particular case.
Why so?
The body would have been on the floor where the bullet defect was in the floor.
So you just said in your report earlier that a shored wound could be caused by tight clothing. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you're saying that could not have happened in this case?
The shirt did not appear to be tight clothing to me.
Well, it was made of bamboo, as we established, right? Is that correct?
I am taking your word for it. I do not know that it's a bamboo shirt.
Okay. And you did not investigate that at all?
No, ma'am.
But you had the shirt in your possession?
It was seized as evidence, yes.
And you never checked what kind of fabric it was?
No, ma'am.
And you never checked if that could be a possibility.
No, ma'am.
And you knew that spandex was kind of a material that could make that kind of short mark that you just mentioned, correct?
It would have to be super tight clothing.
Super tight clothing.
Yes.
Or a fabric that's even stronger than the spandex that you mentioned.
The strength of the fabric, I don't believe, has a huge play in it unless it is form-fitting and compressing the skin, much like a hard surface or firm surface would.
Okay? But what you said in your report was that held in place by tight clothing could cause a short wound.
As has been explained to me, yes.
Okay. Detective, in your report, you mention let's see. So it is possible that his shirt could have caused the wound and not the floor.
I'm going to object to asked and answered.
I'll let him answer.
I don't know if it's possible or not for that particular shirt to have caused a short wound.
Because you did not do any investigation about the shirt.
Because the shirt did not appear to be form-fitting and very tight.
Did it cover over the shoulder where the wound was?
It was a full T-shirt at the time.
That's what I'm saying. So was the T-shirt where the wound was on his back, where the bullet exited, was his shirt covering that part of his body?
Certainly.
Okay. Was there a hole in the shirt at that location?
Yes, ma'am.
How big was the hole?
The size of the bullet?
So small. Small.
Fabric stretches and contracts, so it was a bullet size.
Okay. So when you had this shirt and you saw the bullet hole, it was after the shirt had been cut off by the firefighters. Is that correct?
It hadn't been cut off. It had been cut down the middle, down the front,
So just the front was cut. So the back was intact?
minus the defects that we have seen from the bullet and exits, yes.
Okay. So you were able to measure that. Do you have a measurement for those bullet holes in the shirt?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So it is possible that his shirt could have caused the wound, the short wound.
Object again that we've asked and answered this 3 times
Sustained.
now.
Okay, so is it possible that any shirt could have caused a short wound in any kind of,
And I'm going to object to foundation as to any overly broad.
as an expert?
Let me rule on the objection.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'll sustain the objection.
As an expert and in your professional opinion, could that fabric of his shirt that he was wearing that day caused a short wound?
Again, I'm going to object to asked and answered multiple times.
Sustain.
In the last paragraph of your report, Detective, you indicate that you were able to confirm your suspicion of the body position at the scene. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did you mean by suspicion?
Well, at the time, I couldn't see through his body to see the full trajectories, so I did need the information from the autopsy. The trajectory rods helped with that, as well as the doctor's statements. All of that combined did give me the 2 different bullet paths.
Okay. And then, can you tell me, Detective, what happened to my husband's shirt? Do you know where it is now?
It is in evidence, as far as I'm aware.
And it's, when you looked at it, where was it?
The last I physically saw that shirt was when I handed it off to a crime scene tech to put into a drying cage with the instructions, once it was dry, to have it moved into the property facility.
And so, did you see it after it was in the property facility?
No, ma'am, I have not.
So you saw it before it was dried, is that correct?
While it was wet from the medical examiner's office, yes.
And that's when you examined it?
I had seen it at the scene as well.
And then, did you ever examine it?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so you saw it twice.
That's fair.
Okay. So you didn't test it for anything?
I did not.
Did anyone test it for anything?
I
that
do
you're
not
aware
know.
of? That you're aware of?
I do not know.
So you're not aware of it?
Correct. I do not know if anybody else tested it.
Okay. Was the wood floor tested for any fragments of the projectile?
It was actually seized, so it was not tested.
What does seized mean?
We cut it out of the floor and kept it.
Right. And then was it tested after it was seized?
No, ma'am.
So the wood floor plank that was taken from my residence was never tested for any fragments of the projectile?
The projectile was intact, minus a deformity to it.
Okay. But there wasn't any reason, are you saying there was no reason to test it?
There had been no implication or indication that there was a request for it to be tested.
And you wouldn't do that to see if the projectile actually hit the floor?
No, ma'am. All the other circumstances and information that led up to that decision to seize the floor, everything appeared that it was going to be related to the actual bullet that passed through your husband's body and struck the floor.
Wouldn't testing the floor actually be the easiest way to be sure that the bullet hit the floor?
Not necessarily would it leave anything behind. Like I said, the bullet was a full metal jacket. It was still intact. There had been a significant amount of blood that had pooled in it. I do not know if there would be residue left behind in it for testing.
Fair. Okay. Was the projectile tested for any marks from the floor?
No, ma'am.
Were you aware that this was a rental house that we lived in?
I believe I'd heard that.
Okay. Were you aware that we had only lived there for about 3 weeks prior to this incident?
I knew it was a short time period, but I did not know the actual duration.
Did you know that? You know that by the time you wrote this report, right?
I don't recall knowing the exact time frame that you had lived there.
Okay. So the defect in the floor of the rental house that we lived in could have already been there before this incident. Is that correct?
Not in my opinion, no.
But it could have.
An objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Sustained.
So of all the divots that we saw yesterday in the pictures on the floor, it could not have been there beforehand?
And again, asked and answered.
I'll let him answer. Go ahead.
The divots I believe you're referring to were extremely smaller than the actual defect, which was still relatively fresh and not sealed like the other divots were.
Okay, can we see? These were previously published, so I can use them, right?
Yeah.
Can we look
Just
at these?
refer to the exhibit number, please.
Okay. Just put it on. Detective, can you see that? I can't see that very well on there. So, in Exhibit 57, Detective,
I'm looking.
this, where my pen is pointing,
Yes, ma'am?
that's the defect that you're referring to where the bullet struck. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And these defects were already previously at the residence. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And do they look that much significantly different than that to you?
Yes, they do.
What do you think the measurement difference in that is, in your professional opinion?
There is no scale in this photograph. It would be difficult for me to give you an estimate.
So in your estimation, this defect is much larger than this defect. Is that correct?
The second defect you're pointing to appears to be wood grain indentations. The other is an actual defect in the board.
Okay. Thank you. But this defect, this piece of wood that was cut out, was not tested. Is that correct?
Again, asked and answered.
Technically correct, but I'll let him answer.
Correct. To my knowledge, it was not tested.
Thank you. So do you know, Detective, for a fact, that the defect on my wood floor was caused by the second bullet?
And again, I'm going to object to asked and answered.
Sustained.
When we looked at the projectiles yesterday, the one from the baseboard clearly had white paint on it from the baseboard. Is that correct?
Baseboard or the drywall, perhaps.
Okay, but we all saw the white paint. Is that correct?
There was a white marking on it.
Was that tested for the white paint?
No, ma'am.
Why not?
There was no decision made to have it tested.
Because it was logical that it was in the baseboard where the baseboard was painted white, right?
It was very clear that it had passed through your husband and lodged in the baseboard. And upon recovery, there was no deformation to it, indicating that it was a straight-on impact or relatively close so that it embedded itself into the baseboard.
Correct. So it wasn't tested because it really didn't need to be, in your opinion.
Correct.
Okay. That's fair. Next, we looked at the projectile that, according to you, made the defect in my wood floor. Is that correct?
I don't understand your question. Next, we look at it, but I don't see anything.
Oh, we saw the projectile. Can I find out what exhibit that was?
Your paralegal has all those photographs.
Can we use the actual
Yeah,
exhibit?
She can approach and Are you looking for the actual projectile?
Yes.
I believe it's a smaller. Do you want her to hand that to the witness?
Is that 239? Okay. Detective, for the record, you're looking at exhibit 239, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that the projectile that we are talking about that you claimed made the divot in my wood floor?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So was that projectile was not tested, is that correct?
Your Honor,
Is that what you
I'm
said?
going to object to asked and answered at least 3 times.
Sustained.
Does that projectile look pristine to you?
No, ma'am. As I've previously testified, it is slightly deformed.
What side is it deformed on? What part about it is deformed?
The back end, the heel area is compressed a little bit so that it's now oval as opposed to circular.
And that would indicate what?
That would indicate that as the bullet struck something firm on its side, it compressed, and then it continued on moving.
Okay. So that's what you mean by a shored wound. It hit up against something. Is that correct?
The terminology as it's been described to me is it's the skin is against a firm surface. So in this particular case, the floor would be the firm surface. So as it's entering or exiting your husband and starting to try to enter the floor is forcing the bullet to kind of ricochet, but the body's still keeping it in place. So it's now deforming a little bit, and it's still expending its energy to escape from underneath the body.
Okay. And if my husband was in fact laying on the floor, how did he get out from under his body? Wouldn't it have gotten stuck under? That's my question. Just
what?
could you explain that to me?
I think I just did. So the bullet is a full metal jacket. It still has its energy. Until it starts striking things to cause resistance to it, to slow it down, it's going to expend its energy at a normal rate. I think I just lost the mic. I'm not sure.
No, it's on.
Okay. When it starts striking firm objects, then it'll start bleeding the energy away. And in this particular case, as it's exiting your husband's body, it's impacting bone, it's impacting the flesh that's compressed against the floor, and it's impacting the floor now. So there is going to be a lot of resistance against that. Now, where it exited, it's still not free to just fly like the one that went through his chest and out the back. It's still semi-trapped between your husband's body and the floor, so that's going to cause even more energy drain until it comes to rest.
And how far away from my husband's shoulder was that bullet fragment found? The projectile, I guess.
When it was found, I don't know the exact measurement away from it. I would say a foot or more, maybe.
Okay, so that's what you're talking about the energy. It still had energy to keep moving. Is
Yes.
that correct?
It had enough to escape from being under the body.
Okay. So because of what you saw at the scene, and you state in your report that it was your suspicion that that's what had happened, was that my husband was supine on the floor. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So was it your suspicion from the start of this investigation that led you to not confirm any other alternative?
What other alternative, ma'am? My job was to collect the information and put it together with the information that was being collected in the interviews. The information from the interviews did not completely match everything that I had learned at the scene.
Okay. Well, let's see. You did not test the wood floor, is that correct?
I'm going to object again to asked and answered multiple times.
Sustained.
You did not test the projectile, is that correct?
I'm going to again object to asked and answered multiple times, and I'm going to move to start striking every question.
Sustained.
You did not investigate my husband's shirt.
And object again to asked and answered multiple times.
Sustained.
Did you call Aloha, Carolina, and ask them about the fabric of my husband's shirt?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that you made an assumption early on and only investigated the things that supported that assumption?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Remember in your report where you stated that the bullet strike to the abdomen had an upward trajectory, passing through the left lung before exiting near the left shoulder?
Yes.
Okay. Could that upward trajectory have been caused by my husband falling backwards and the bullet hitting the abdomen and going upwards and exiting his shoulder as he hit the floor?
No, not in my opinion.
Okay. Detective Coons, on July 11th, 2019, were you at the Chandler Police Department during my interview?
No, ma'am.
Were you there that morning when we were brought into the Chandler Police Department at all?
No, ma'am, I was at the scene.
Okay. I thought you didn't get to the scene until 11:45.
No, that was when we actually obtained the search warrant. It was about a little after 11:45. I was already at the scene shortly after 9 o'clock.
Okay. Did you see the injury on the back of Alex's head with your own eyes?
I did not take a close look at it. I saw the paper towel that he was holding against his head.
But you did not see the wound itself?
No.
Okay. Are you aware if Alex's hands were swabbed for gunshot residue?
There would have been no reason to swab for gunshot residue.
Why is that?
He had already stated that he was the shooter.
He had stated it?
To my knowledge, that's how the information was provided to me.
Okay. Are you aware if my hands were swabbed for gunshot residue?
I am not.
Okay. Are you aware if my daughter's hands were swabbed for gunshot residue?
I am not.
Do you know for a fact that Alex shot the gun in question?
Based on the information provided, that is what I have, yes.
Do you know that for a fact?
Just with the information that's been provided, I can't tell you one way or another if there's another shooter because the evidence does not show that there was.
Okay. So all you really know for sure, after your 5 years of investigation, is that my husband was shot 2 times, 1 by that particular gun, 2 with those particular bullets, at my residence, and that he passed away as a result of that. Would that be correct?
Oversimplified, there is a lot more information that is available to us for that.
Is that correct? Is that question correct?
Those are some known facts, yes, but that is not all we know.
So you can't really tell me for sure who shot him, can you?
Well, as we've established, I was not present when it happened. I can only go with the facts of what people have said and what the evidence shows.
Okay. You don't really know what time he was shot, do you?
Actually, no, I don't.
Okay. You don't really know if he was falling back or lying supine on the floor, do you?
Yes, I do.
You don't really know what time my husband actually passed away, do you?
No, ma'am, I don't.
Thank you. No more questions.
All right, redirect.
Your Honor, I still have stuff that she
You
gave.
can pass those to, let's have your paralegal get the report that you gave him, but I'll take Exhibit 239, is it? Do you need any of the photos? They're over there.
Yes.
All right, Detective, I know we started yesterday, so I'm going to kind of go back through a few different areas, all right?
Yes, ma'am.
In terms of just understanding your role working with crime scene techs, you had testified yesterday that they are often the ones who actually pick up the item of evidence and put it in a bag, correct?
Frequently, yes.
Are you there observing them as they do that?
Yes.
You're not just wandering around outside drinking a coffee while they're processing the house.
No, ma'am.
So every item that we've brought in is something that you observed, you were there as they were documented and collected.
Correct.
And some of them, like the gun, you actually had to make safe before it could be collected.
Actually, Detective Duncan is the one that made it safe, but I was present for those things.
Okay. You were asked about the backyard being searched. When you have other people searching the house, and I think you'd said it was a collaborative event, if someone observes something, do they bring it to your attention as the scene agent?
Yes, if I'm asking somebody to do a search for me to help out with a larger area, it is their responsibility to bring it forward to me if they discover something that they think is important.
And if they see something, you would then go out and observe it yourself?
Yes.
Okay. We had talked about the gun yesterday and the ejection port. See if this will be visible here. What do we see right here?
So that is the ejection port.
So when we're talking about how this, how a semi-automatic gun works, and you were talking about the ejection to the right, is that in this gun indicated by the opening where that ejection port is, the side that it's on of the gun?
The opening is part of how it'll indicate where it ejects. Also the extractor, which is a small lever behind the ejection port, is what grabs the casing to pull it out. And internally, there's going to be an ejector that it's usually a small pinpoint that kicks it, and the springs basically flip it out.
So all of that was what made you understand which way the casings would have ejected out of this gun.
Yes.
Now, you told us that that every gun can be slightly different if it's more upward, more outward, and you are unaware for this gun what that ejection would be like.
Correct.
I'm going to go back to your diagram. This is Exhibit 5. Are you able to, by looking at the measurements that you took, give us an estimate of the distance between those two casings that you have listed here as 9 and 10?
My estimation would be a couple feet.
And I guess, would your measurements, did you take measurements of where those were?
I took measurements from the reference points to triangulate it, but I did not measure distance between each object to the other objects.
So the measurements that we see, I'm going to take it out of here. On the second page of your report, are those triangulations that you're talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So are we able to extrapolate from this any distance between those two, or we are left with what you recall at this point?
You're left with what I recall, but I also, on my diagram, I put a reference line or dimension line. It's near the north-south indicator, and that helps somebody who's looking at it get an idea of what a measurement might be in the diagram.
Okay. And is that this line up here?
Correct.
Okay. There was a lot of questions about where the shooter might have been at the time when this shooting occurred. Start with 19 while I look for a different perspective. But in this house, you have talked about a rounded wall. Can you tell us where where you're talking about for that. And I'm going to put up 14. So on 14, what is this rounded wall that you're talking about when you're referring to the location or potential location, let me say the general location of the shooter?
So the rounded wall is at the south end of the main room that we're in, where the body's at. And it's also directly across from the hallway that runs to the 3 bedrooms and the hall bathroom.
So is that this wall that we see in Exhibit 14 right here?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, when we are talking about a gun being fired and casings ejecting, as someone who has fired guns before, have you fired them on where the casings are landing on a hard surface?
Yes,
Do casings bounce and roll?
they do.
So is the location of these casings, do they tell us exactly where they initially landed when they ejected?
No.
This is just where they ended up or stopped.
It's where we found them.
They could have been kicked at some point as well.
Yes.
Okay. When you are looking at this scene, are you relying upon these physical items of evidence to reach your opinion?
They would be some of it, yes.
And then are you relying on your training and experience in conjunction with observing the physical evidence as well as the injuries to Charles?
That would also be good pieces of the puzzle.
And are you able to give us the exact location of this shooter?
No, ma'am.
Are you giving us a general area of the shooter?
Yes, ma'am.
And for the shot that goes through Charles's chest and out his back, where is the general area that you are saying the shooter was located?
The shooter would have been located somewhere in the opening to where the kitchen and the hallway is, in close proximity to the rounded corner as well.
Okay, I put up Exhibit 16 here. So somewhere in this area?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, you were asked a lot about the autopsy report and stippling. You were provided with a copy of it by the defendant, correct?
It was never provided to me.
You weren't allowed to look at a copy of it?
The report that she gave me was my report from the Chandler report system, not the medical examiner.
Have you ever looked at the autopsy report?
I have.
Did you, in regards to the injury to Charles's chest, the entrance wound, ever see the word stippling used there?
No, that was not in the report.
When you were reading that, did you interpret the way that Dr. Baumgartner wrote that to mean abrasions related to the actual entrance wound of the gunshot?
That's how I interpreted it.
Does that mean that Dr. Baumgartner didn't mean stippling?
I don't know medical jargon so well, so he could have very well meant it with how he wrote it, but to me it did not come across that way.
Okay. And when you were at the autopsy, you don't recall him ever telling you about the stippling?
Not in that word, no.
But you were there at the autopsy, correct?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Are you in the room with him, like right there next to him?
No, we are actually mandated to stay in the, I guess it's the viewing area of that particular location.
There's a window between you and he's in a different room?
Yes.
So you also were asked about Dr. Baumgartner saying in a defense interview that because of this, what you've now been told is stippling around that gunshot wound to the chest, that the shooter or the gun being used could have been 2 to 4 or so feet away. Do you recall being told that?
Yes, I do.
All right. I have a little thing here, 24 inches. So 2 feet is 24 inches?
Yes, ma'am.
And I don't know if I can approach or if I have to have my,
Go ahead.
thank you. So when we're talking about 2 feet, saying from the wound on his chest,
The indicator would be from the muzzle to the chest.
so that distance is 2 feet.
Yes.
Understanding that additional information that the defendant provided you, that Dr. Baumgartner advised during a defense interview, does that alter your opinion in any way as to where the shooter would have been, the general location of the shooter for this shot to his chest?
No, it actually makes sense with the completed trajectory that ended up in the baseboard.
So those being 2 feet away from Charles Vallow when the end of the gun to his chest did not seem so far away that, or so close that it didn't fit in with your opinion.
Yeah, 2 to 4 feet would be certainly consistent with what I saw.
So he's 2 to 4 feet away from him in this area.
Away from that area, yes.
I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the floor itself that you observed underneath Charles's shoulder after he was removed, okay? I'm putting up Exhibit 244. That's the actual piece of wood. And Your Honor, can I actually publish this to the jury and have them
Yes.
look at it? Thank you. If I can have just all of them look at that, and then I'll ask a couple questions. So, Detective, in looking at the floor itself, you told us that you looked through the whole floor in that room to see if you found any similar types of defects, correct?
Correct.
Did you find other defects on the floor, just period?
There are other imperfections.
You had testified on cross that there was something about the freshness of the defect itself. Were you able to sort of feel a difference in the wood grain, where that indentation is that we see in Exhibit 59 and in the actual piece 244, than you observed in other defects across the floor?
Yes, it did appear to be different than the other imperfections or defects.
Was there anything about the defect itself that indicated a path of travel?
Yes, there is a kind of a linear mark to it, and you'll also see at the in this particular photograph that there's like a slight semicircular edge as it exits towards the top right.
And was there anything about that pattern itself, both the depth, the freshness, the location of it, that made you feel it was consistent with a bullet strike?
All of those factors help make it consistent with it, not to mention the location of the projectile that was in close proximity to this defect.
So let's talk a little bit about those projectiles. I'm putting Exhibit 40 up here. Do we see the projectile over here next to Charles Vallow?
Yes.
Now, were you aware when you were given this scene that fire had already been there?
Yes, I was.
Pretty obvious because of all the medical devices, right?
They left a tail.
And if you were advised that fire has testified that they rolled Mr. Vallow onto his right side towards the west, would that have then exposed his left shoulder there?
It should have.
Do you know whether or not that bullet was ever moved at all personally?
Well, I have no idea what the condition of that bullet was until I physically saw it.
Okay. Now, the location of this bullet here on the floor next to Charles, why is that significant in determining whether or not Charles was upright or down?
Well, it's significant because for this particular shot, he would have basically been vulnerable, if you will.
Let me ask it this way. Why is that significant in making your opinion that he was on the floor versus upright for the shot to the abdomen?
Oh, okay. The angle of entry into the abdomen and exit is not consistent with him being upright or any other way other than lying on the floor. The defect is where the defect is, and the bullet, as demonstrated with the chest shot, had enough energy to exit. And had he been any other direction, I would not have expected the defect to be right underneath the body.
So if someone is standing and someone's on the floor shooting upward, where would the bullet go?
Well, if he's standing and the shooter is horizontal, then the bullet would go towards the ceiling or high wall area.
So this idea that it would end up on the floor below him or right next to him, would that fit with that scenario?
Of him standing, no.
When you're looking at the bullets and the location of them in this scene, we had that other projectile, and I'm going to put 20 up here, that went into the baseboard on the east side of the room, correct?
Yes.
When you talk about someone being standing upward and the bullet being slowed, can you explain to us how this bullet landing over here and embedding itself in that baseboard is consistent with Charles being standing upright when he was shot?
It fits the dimension of the room. It fits the wound path through the chest and exiting the back, because the exit is lower than the entry. So there's already a downward motion to it. I know that the bullet struck the spine prior to exiting, so that would bleed even some more energy from it and potentially cause it to start dropping as well.
So the wound itself was slightly downward,
Yes,
and then given the distance away from Charles, this would be, in your mind, consistent with having gone through him in that chest to back exit downward angle.
correct.
So that really only left one other bullet in the room to explain the other injury,
Yes, ma'am.
and that's the one that was right next to him.
Correct.
You were asked whether or not you made assumptions about the shooting, how it occurred. When you got to the scene, you were given a basic briefing, right?
Yes.
How do you start looking at a scene when you're observing the evidence there?
I do an overall assessment of the scene. I apply the initial information that's given to me, and I progress from there.
Are you, if the physical evidence is what it is, are you trying to find a new way to make that work?
No, I let the evidence speak for itself.
So here, the physical evidence is one bullet is in the baseboard, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so that had to come from somewhere that makes sense for that trajectory, right?
Yes.
And then the other bullet is right next to Charles.
Correct.
And so, again, you're looking at all the physical evidence and how that fits together.
Yes.
And in this case, in your opinion, the shot through Charles's chest that exited his back, did the evidence support to you that he was standing up for this shot?
Yes.
And in your opinion, looking at all the physical evidence from the casings, the projectile, the injuries to Charles, was that consistent with the shooter? And now that you know the stippling, with the shooter being still in that sort of kitchen hallway-ish area when he fired that shot at Charles?
Yes.
And in your opinion, again, looking at the casings, the injuries to Charles, the location of the projectile, as well as the shored wound, and the lack of stippling, does that support your opinion that Charles was on the ground when he was shot in the abdomen?
Yes, it does.
I have no other questions, Your Honor.
Are there any questions for this witness from the jury? I'm not seeing any. You can step down. It can call its next witness.